All right. All right, then. Welcome back to another episode of Bright Brains. Today, my guest is Flame. She's from Singapore. And today, we're going to talk about archaeology and anthropology and things like that. So, Flame, tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got interested in this kind of subject.
Hey, nice to meet you. Thanks for having me here. So my name's Flame. I'm here living in Singapore. And I guess I first got interested in this subject. This would have been when I was a kid, like 5, 6 years old, and my older brother had told me that no one really knew who built the Great Pyramids. And I guess that
Mm,
that was the first thing that it just like absolutely fascinated me from that time that there was this thing and no one knew where it came from, like really. And I guess like throughout life, I just kind of started getting interested in random things that didn't really seem to make sense from our own history. So whether it was things in archaeology or things we found like, like the idea of, giants or anything like that. And then, yeah, it pretty much just, me reading about different things and seeing, which things are provable, which things are not provable, and trying to see how it made sense with the accepted version of history.
yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of unexplained things in history, like the Great Pyramids, that's one. Then you have what is it, Stonehenge? That's a fascinating one. And then one that's always fascinated me was the heads on Easter Island. Yeah, that's so strange. Like it's just a very um iconic stone heads. And recently they discovered that the heads have a body. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, I remember when I
Yeah, like
first
it's
heard
it's
that.
deeper. Yeah, so I'm curious, like, what's your theory about like the Great Pyramids? What do you think is the origin of the Great Pyramids? Was it the Egyptians or was it something else or
So, I mean, my theory about this is that a lot of these things, so not just the pyramids, but like the various things in different parts of the world. Like I live in Southeast Asia, so I'm not sure if you're familiar with Gunung Padang, but that was the big pyramid that they had found in Indonesia, which was supposedly about 20,000 years old.
oh wow.
And yeah, and then of course at this time that according to accepted history, we were supposed to be still hunting and gathering and not, settling down in one place building massive monuments.
Hmm.
So I guess because of the existence of things like that, it makes me believe that okay, if our version of civilization didn't build it, because we only started settling down and becoming true, cities around, barely 5,000 years ago, then there must have been someone else previously that had done this. So whether it was, a previous, age of man, for lack of a better word,
Hmm.
which I think is likely the case. And then, so something happened to them that, destroyed them, and we don't have much evidence left of their existence except for some of these massive megalithic monuments. So it also makes me think that, maybe they were specifically building them so big out of these massive stones for absolutely no reason at all to kind of make sure that there was something left of them at the end for some
Hmm.
reason. So yeah, a bit of a random theory, but that's kind of like my what my thoughts have been.
Yeah, I know there's this one theory called Younger Dryas. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, familiar with
Maybe you
that
could
from Graham Hancock. Yeah.
yeah, could you elaborate on that a bit? Because I know a little bit, but I'm not like too versed on it.
Okay, so basically, the idea of Younger Dryas is that the okay, we all know at the end of the ice age, the ice caps melted and the sea levels rose by about 100 meters. So this could have easily, wiped out many civilizations that would have existed at this time. So the thing that people debate about is like, okay, at the end of the ice age, if it had happened gradually, the sea levels rose gradually, and nothing would have happened. People would have just slowly moved inland. But of
Hmm.
course, the Younger Dryas theory, something would have happened that pretty much instantly, melted these ice caps, creating a situation similar to the Great Flood that many
Hmm.
that many different I guess, cultures do talk about, which would have caused this 100-meter flooding to happen instantaneously, which would result in the loss of many civilizations.
Yeah.
And the idea that, a lot of things we don't know about that happened at that time. And then I guess a lot of the specific time Younger Dryas was about supposed to be like 11,500 years ago, which does coincide with, the end of the last ice age and the so-called beginning of civilization as we currently know it. So like, what are really the odds of us only having records from this time when human beings, as in like Homo sapiens, our version of humans, have been around for like 200,000 years, but yet we only have just a few thousand years of history.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting how we have no sort of explanation about any of this stuff. We just sort of guess. And my thing is, I feel like there's a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? I feel like the Younger Dryas theory might answer a lot, but I feel like there's a lot of pushback from like mainstream like academia. Why do you think that is?
Hey, sorry to interrupt, but are you looking to reach a dynamic and engaged audience of curious minds? Well, look no further. Bright Brains Podcast is the perfect platform to showcase your business or product. You'll be able to reach a diverse and intelligent audience and engage with listeners passionate about personal development, technology, and more. Elevate your brand through thought provoking discussions. Don't miss this opportunity to promote your business on one of the fastest growing podcasts in the market. Contact us today to discuss advertising options and elevate your brand to the next level. Contact us at brightbrainspod@gmail.com to secure your advertising spot on Bright Brains today. Again, that's Bright Brains with a Z pod pod at gmail.com. Now, back to the podcast.
I think in general, in mainstream academia, there has always been pushback against things that went against the accepted norm. I
Uh,
mean, people were like literally burned at the stake for claiming that the world was round or not the center of the universe.
yeah.
So it's very difficult in general for people to change what has been accepted for a long time. And in this particular case, I think that people are very, very less likely to be acceptable of the fact that we might not be the first or the only or the smartest or the most advanced civilization to have walked this planet. But yeah, in general, I think, whether in history, whether in science, that's pretty much always the case that it'll be very, very hard to change what is the accepted norm.
Do you think that maybe like the powers that be like governments and like academia, they kind of like suppress this information, like they don't want us to know? Like it's not
I,
just the,
mm,
so you think they do?
I think that's definitely the case, but till now, I still do kind of wonder what would be like the reason for that. So
Hmm.
that's something that, I hope that we'll know one day. And I hope this doesn't sound like way too far-fetched now, but it always makes me think of, like the ending of the original Planet of the Apes movie, where they, forbidden them from going to that whole half of the island. And then, for obvious reasons, because they found out that their accepted version of history was completely false. And
Yeah.
it would have, a life-changing effect on humanity if they were to find out. So I guess something along those lines. It's easier to just keep people ignorant and going on, life as usual.
So here's my theory, and I have nothing to back this up, but I think that maybe humanity was like really advanced and maybe they had like some kind of alternate power source or something. Because if you look at the pyramids and like Stonehenge and all these other massive structures, we still don't know how they sort of lifted these like huge blocks,
Correct.
even our cranes today can't lift them. And my thinking is maybe they had some kind of power source and that they don't want us to rediscover
Mm,
that power source because maybe it was limitless, you know? And our modern society is based on fossil fuels, you know? So if somebody discovered something that could replace fossil fuels, then yeah, our whole society would like change overnight. And I think they know this, but they keep intentionally keep it secret. You know, I know that's kind of out there, but it makes me wonder. Like, for example, the Great Sphinx. They say that it originally wasn't like a head on there. They
yeah,
say maybe it was like changed by something that came afterwards. And my
yeah.
thinking is, if it was changed afterwards, like who changed it and what was it before? And then they also said the Great Sphinx has like water erosion
Yeah,
on it.
correct.
Yeah, which is, you know, it's kind of wild to me. But what do you think it would take for like, you know, like is there like any kind of smoking gun, something like an archaeologist could find and that could like prove this theory? Or do you think it's just we will probably never be able to prove it or I don't know.
I kind of feel like at this point, no matter what you find, there's always going to be someone else that is going to be able to, especially if it's going to be like, the majority of the academic world versus, a much smaller minority. It'll be much
Mhm.
easier to, explain it away as, oh, this is not really true what this person is saying, or, this person is just completely crazy, or, making up facts. So I think unless, I don't know, I find it would be very, very hard to change accepted history no matter what you found, unless
Yeah.
someone decided that people's mindset needed to change.
Out of like all these like megalithic structures that fascinate you, which one fascinates you the most?
I mean, because like I said, I live in Southeast Asia, and before I was in Singapore, I lived in Indonesia for a very long time.
Hmm.
And I guess it was very fascinating to be actually in a place where a lot of these things had happened. Like, for example, Gunung Padang is there, which I was lucky enough to be able to actually take a trip there and visit it. And then you have the other human species that were discovered there, the Homo florensis, the so-called Hobbit people, which again
Hobbit
was
people.
another, yeah, like a real, like, we know us Homo sapiens, we know Neanderthals, and then there were like a literal miniature race of humans that lived
Hmm.
in the islands of Flores, Indonesia. And so you kind of hear about these things on the news, but it's funny when you can walk into an actual museum and see the actual, skeletons or things that they really unearthed in this place that I'm living in. So there's a lot of very strange things in Indonesia itself, and I guess being able to experience a bit more firsthand rather than someone else's version. So it was quite interesting for me.
Do you think that like maybe, you know, there's a theory uh like the theory of Atlantis, you know, that they say it was like a really advanced society that fell into the ocean. Do you think Atlantis was real at one point or do you think it was just like a myth?
I think it's there are enough versions of that story that lead me to believe that something similar must have happened.
Hmm.
Because so basically, Atlantis tells us of a very powerful kind of seafaring nation because they were, in the ocean with the concentric circles. That's how the city was shaped, and they described it like that. And, I guess they were kind of a not very nice city at war with the rest of the world until, something happened that sunk it into the sea. So that's the Atlantis story. And then you have the one in the Hindu epic, the Mahabharata, that it literally talks about a city that is shaped like that as well, like concentric circles that also was at war with the rest of the world for 10 years. So specifically says 10 years on both occasions. And then at the end of the war, it was some secret weapon that was unleashed and destroyed it and sunk it into the sea.
Hmm.
So there's like a few versions of this story in different cultures that have a lot of things in common. So it kind of leads me to believe that this must have been a thing, whether 10,000 years ago or 20,000 years ago. At this point, our stories, well, they are myths, but they had originated from something like an actual event. I think that's very likely. I mean, even now we're still like, discovering new continents. Just a few weeks back, they officially recognized the eighth continent.
Oh,
So
really?
that's
What is the
yeah,
eighth
yeah, yeah.
continent?
It's
Is it like,
Zealandia, which I guess we knew about its existence for a while, but they were debating, does it get to be a continent? So now they've actually officially recognized it as a real continent based on like how the land is separated, how the different species of plants or animals on different versions that could have been considered the same continent but are not. So now it's officially its own continent.
what's interesting? So you mentioned about these circles, these cities, and you said like
Mhm.
a great weapon sank them. It kind of makes me wonder, like, what if they had nuclear bombs in the past? What if that's what caused these great floods? What if there was a nuclear war? You know, I know it sounds kind of far fetched, but what if they were so advanced that they killed themselves? And it was like we bombed ourselves back to the Stone Age. There's this quote by I think it's Albert Einstein where he says something like, if World War III is fought with nuclear bombs, World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. So maybe we destroyed ourselves back to the Stone Age. And it makes me wonder, because now with everything going in the world right now, maybe we're about to repeat that cycle. And maybe that's all of human history. Maybe we just get so big and then we destroy ourselves. We go back to the Stone Age and then we do it all over again. You know, what do you think about that?
I mean, I've thought about that many times, which is pretty much what I do think that we had, gone through many civilizations or a few different times and ended up destroying ourselves, which is, maybe one of the reasons why they would so-called try to not let people know about the previous civilizations and then knowing that we're going down the same route and we're just going to destroy ourselves and be gone again.
Mhm.
But yeah, the idea of ancient nuclear war. So I have read a few strange things about this. So there was this mine, a uranium mine in, sorry, now I forget which country it was, but in Africa. And so
Mhm.
they were mining this uranium, and basically there's three different so-called isotopes of uranium, and there's one specific one that you need to use to build nuclear weapons. So while they were processing this uranium, they found out that the isotope they were trying to look for was like, 60% lower than it should have been, compared to any other deposit in the whole world. So
Mhm.
basically, what I'm saying is this uranium mine had already been mined,
Oh, wow.
like, and they have no idea how or why, but the the going theory for this currently is that it had occurred naturally, so that this uranium naturally mined itself. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that
that
kills
was
me. That kills me how like they try to say stuff happen naturally. Like how could that happen naturally?
yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
maybe I don't understand enough to know how it would happen naturally, but so far that's the only self-mining uranium we've ever found in the whole world. We haven't found anything
yeah,
else like it.
yeah. That it's really bizarre. How many unanswered questions we have. Like for example, one thing about the Great Pyramids, they say is that inside the pyramids there were no torches. Like in a lot of these ancient like
Yeah, I've
ruins,
heard
there's
that.
like a place for torches, and they say that maybe they had like batteries and flashlights and things like that, which makes me wonder, maybe there's this alternate energy like I mentioned before. um I'm curious, what are some other like out there, or not out there, but what are some other theories that you may have about ancient civilizations?
Well, I think just speaking of the alternate energy theory, so there's another
Mhm.
theory. This one I probably don't know that much information about it, but just something I've read. So you'll find that most megalithic sites, whether it's the pyramids, whether it's Stonehenge, whether it's Easter Island, that for some reason, okay, aside from being all built with humongous massive stones that we don't even know how they lifted it, but they were also quarried somewhere very far away. So aside from getting these huge stones, they decided it was very important for them to bring it to this specific spot. So
Hmm.
it makes me believe like the location was important, or else why would they bring such a huge thing to that place? And then one of the things I've read is that there are apparently bands of infrasound that go around the world.
Bands
Um,
of what?
Infrasound. So
Infrasound.
basically, okay, ultrasound is the sound that occurs above human level of hearing, so we can't hear it. Sorry, the frequency is too high. So infrasound is the same thing, except the frequency is too low. So we
Hmm.
can't hear it, but it can affect us in different ways. Um, but anyway, so there are bands of infrasound that goes around the world, and maybe these huge stones or monuments built in specific spots were a way of harnessing that as a use of energy, as you said, an alternative energy source. So I mean, we can convert, you know, other kinds of energy into other kinds of energy, kinetic energy into light energy. Why can't you convert sound energy into something as well, especially if it's already there in existence going around the world?
Hmm. That's interesting. And you know what's even more interesting is like you mentioned before. So there's the pyramids in Egypt. There's the pyramid that you mentioned in Singapore. Um,
Indonesia, yeah.
Indonesia. That's right. There's the pyramids in like Mexico, other places in South America, um, and there's possibly pyramids in Antarctica. Have you heard about that?
I've heard about that.
Yeah. So what's your take on Antarctica? What do you think is going on there?
Yeah, and Antarctica is a bit of a strange one because I don't think anyone really knows much about what's going on there.
Uh-huh.
But there's another funny thing to share about Antarctica. So there was this map that was so-called from around the 1600s. So this was before we had reached Antarctica in our current human civilization.
Hmm.
Now, not only did this map have Antarctica on it, it showed Antarctica in detail how it would look if it didn't have any ice.
Hmm.
So somehow or another, I mean, this person could have only made this map either if he was like, extremely smart and managed to be able to fly across the world to Antarctica and map it out, or based on older sources of this map, which if it's Antarctica without any ice, it would literally have to been way beyond any number of time that we even imagined people were, sailing, much less making maps.
Yeah.
So there is again proof that there was a civilization before us that was doing a lot of things that we only barely learned how to do not even 1,000 years ago. We haven't been able to make these kind of maps for 1,000 years. Okay, fine, maybe 1,000 years by now, but then
Yeah.
someone had done it, many, many, many thousands of years before that.
You know what's really interesting about Antarctica is how um, the whole world kind of, or at least like the first world countries, came to an agreement to not like go down there and like not to like share it, which is interesting because there's so much bickering between countries like USA, China, and Russia. They can't agree on anything, but yet they all agreed to not go into Antarctica or just to like do research.
Leave Antarctica
So
alone, yeah.
yeah, my guess, and this goes back to what I was saying before, is they're keeping it a secret. They know that down there's something there, you know, and I think that with climate change, when the waters start melting, we're going to start seeing some things in Antarctica, and it's interesting to see how the world is going to react to that. Um, so I'm curious, do you think that like aliens play a role in any of this? like any of this ancient stuff? Do you think that maybe we had contact with aliens, or like maybe aliens helped build these structures, or do you think that's all just uh whatever?
Well, personally, I don't really believe in the alien theory because
Uh,
whatever I've read about it doesn't really seem to make that much sense to me. This is just my, my personal thoughts. I think that the unexplained things that we don't know about came from ourselves, like
uh,
humans in the past, but I don't really think that, yeah, the pyramids or anything was necessarily built by aliens. Whether
yeah,
whether or not we have at some point come in contact with aliens in the past is probably another story. Maybe we have, maybe we haven't, but I don't necessarily think that they were a part of, shaping the history that we have at the moment.
yeah,
Well, that's my belief at this point anyway.
gotcha. If you had a time machine and you could go back to any point in history and like learn the truth about any like one thing, like what would it be?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. I guess if you could only choose one point in history, I would probably go to somewhere around the Younger Dryas incident to kind of understand what really happened at that time and what was
Hmm.
going on before that time. And then I guess and then you would know for sure the answer to pretty much everything that we've been discussing, or at least have an idea about it. I think that would be one of the points that could so-called tell us the truth about this.
You know what's interesting, right? So all over the world there are all these floods happening. Like there was a flood, I think, in Libya, and they said like possibly 20,000 people are dead. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, of
And I
course.
think there's also like a flood in Italy or something, but you know, they showed these pictures of like before and after of Libya, and it's like so much is just like gone. And because we live in a technologically advanced age, we have photos, we can remember what was there. But, in ancient times, once that's gone, you only had word of mouth to really remember what was there, and it kind of just like I was saying before, it feels like this cycle is repeating. So that being said, it's been about 30 minutes. I'm curious, I'll give you the final word. What so like I see you have like a TikTok channel and you make videos about this. I know you're fascinated about this, but why do you share this with the world? Why do you why does it why are you passionate about this? Why do you share it with the world? And you know,
Well, I think that so in my actual channel, you'll probably see that okay, whatever actual theories that I have, I don't really get too much into my theories, but I stick more on the things that we have discovered that do not make any sense.
hmm,
So I would like people to just, kind of be aware of these various things around the world and think about things, research things, form some conclusions that even if you don't form a conclusion, but even if your conclusion is just the one thing that maybe not everything we've been taught in school is fact. I mean, even from the time I was a kid till now, what was the accepted truth has changed, and history and science will continue to change.
uh,
And just an understanding that things might not be the exact way that we've been taught, and people should be open to that idea. And you previously mentioned that now we have photos, but in the past they only had word of mouth. But I guess a final thought I would like to leave you with: if something happened to our current civilization, regardless of what technology we have or what things we have or how smart we think we are, what would actually be left of us, 10,000 years from now? Nothing. You're not going to find any photos. You're not going to find any data. It'll be gone, just like everyone else.
that's true.
And you
You,
would have to, yeah.
there's so much that we have, that doesn't exist in physical form, like it exists in the cloud, like this
Exactly.
video recording, it's only
Yeah.
digital. We don't have it, and even if we did, like if somebody had a VHS tape or a DVD, how would they play it 100 years from now or 1,000 years from now?
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's kind
Or
of interesting. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go on.
no, or like let's say if our civilization had ended and the new one came around, maybe they had their own version of computers or their own version. It's not going to be our version. Even
Yeah.
if they just discovered like, something that had data on it, they wouldn't even necessarily know what it is, much less be able to read it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's interesting. I do. There are some things that I think might be a sign that our civilization existed. One of those is like plastic. There's so much plastic in the ocean. There's so much plastic everywhere. Eventually, that plastic will break down, but it's not going to go anywhere. And I think whoever comes after us, they're going to be like, "What's all this microplastic? Where did all this come from?" So I guess there's that, and also, if
Terrible
they,
thing to leave behind.
yeah, it is, it
But yeah,
is.
no, you're right.
Another thing is, if they ever develop telescopes, supposedly we have a flag and a lander on the moon and footprints there, supposedly, but I don't want to get into that. But that
I
being
guess we have
said,
satellites going around and stuff, so we can
yeah,
see
that's
that
true.
maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, true. But that being said, this was a great talk. I'm glad you made time to come on. I really appreciated this. Before I go, is there anything like you want to promote? Do you want to tell your TikTok channel or your YouTube or anything like that? Or
Okay, well, if anyone wants to follow my weird channel of alternative theories, it's called Crypto Anthropologist. Yeah, you can find it on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok, and feel free to follow me there if you like.
awesome. All right then. Well, hey, take care. Have a good morning to you. All
Yeah, you too. Have a good evening.
right, you as well.
Okay. Good
All right.
night. Bye.
Yep. Stopping the recording.
All right, that's a wrap. Thank you for joining us for another enlightening conversation here on Bright Brains. I hope you've gained valuable insights and inspiration to fuel your own bright ideas. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like and subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform or however else you listen to this podcast. Also, we can be found on all major social media. Just type in Bright Brains with a Z. And remember, the brightest minds are those that never stop seeking knowledge.